Min Jun-ho lay unconscious on the marble floor of the elite school Rising Star, blood seeping from a gash on his head. Around the 14-year-old boy a crowd had gathered, some shouting, some filming on their phones, while a few richly dressed parents stood aside with cold indifference. "Call an ambulance!" cried a woman in a cleaner's uniform, falling to her knees beside the boy. Her hands trembled as she tried to stop the bleeding with her handkerchief. "Don't touch him!" Madame Yu Min-jong, wife of a hotel chain owner, shoved her aside sharply. "Your filthy hands will only make it worse." The woman in the cleaner's uniform raised her head, and her eyes blazed with maternal fury. "He's my son." "All the more reason." Mr. Lee Sang-hyuk, a member of parliament, intervened. "Look what your beggar's status has led him to. The children of our circle beat him precisely because he doesn't belong to our society." Principal Choi Lee-sun literally ran into the hall when he heard the shouting. At 35, he ran the most prestigious school in Seoul, but he had never seen anything like this. A child's blood on the white marble, a crowd of indifferent aristocrats, and a sobbing mother. "What is going on here?" he shouted, rushing toward the fallen boy. "Mr. Principal," said Madame Yu icily, "at last you've arrived. We demand the immediate expulsion of this student." Lee-sun froze. Before him stood a woman in a cleaner's uniform, her face covered with tears, but her features were painfully familiar. 20 years had not erased from his memory those eyes, that small scar on her chin. Min So-yeon. His first love from the orphanage. The girl he had abandoned for wealth and career. "Your son must be expelled." Madame Yu continued to shout at the weeping woman. "He tarnishes the school's reputation with his poverty." Seeing how the woman clenched her fists, restraining tears and rage over her bleeding child, Lee-sun understood the terrible truth. The boy was 14. Exactly the number of years since his last meeting with So-yeon. This beaten child was his son. "Meet me in my office in 10 minutes, he said coldly, his voice like an icy verdict. But first, he grabbed his phone and called an ambulance, staring at the blood of the son he never knew he had. In his office, Lee-sun tried to regain composure. He sat behind the massive wooden desk and closed his eyes, but at once memories returned. The orphanage hope on the outskirts of Seoul. Gray concrete walls, creaking beds, constant lack of everything, from food to warm clothes. Yet there had been something special there, the friendship of children united by misfortune. Lee-sun was 14 when they brought 10-year-old So-yeon to the orphanage. A thin, frightened girl with huge eyes, she hadn't spoken to anyone for weeks. Her parents had died in a car accident, and she had no relatives. It was Lee-sun who took her under his wing. He defended her from older boys, shared his food, helped with homework. Gradually, she opened up and began to smile. Life at the orphanage had been hard, but they supported each other. Lee-sun dreamed of becoming a teacher, and So-yeon wanted to work with children. They planned to enter university together, marry, build a real family. But at 17, his life changed drastically. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His secretary ushered in the participants of the morning conflict. Madame Yu entered first, her head held high. Her red hair was styled in an elaborate updo, and a pearl necklace glistened on her neck. Next came Mr. Lee, a portly middle-aged man in an expensive suit. His face showed barely concealed irritation. Last came So-yeon. She still held her head straight, but Lee-sun saw the tension in her shoulders. Her cleaner's uniform was spotless and ironed, her hair neatly pinned. Even now, in this humiliating situation, she retained her dignity. "Sit down," the principal said curtly, pointing to the chairs in front of his desk. So-yeon sat last, choosing a seat away from the others. She stared out the window, as if the proceedings had nothing to do with her. "Explain the situation," Lee-sun addressed the parents. Madame Yu immediately came to life. "Mr. Principal, we demand the immediate expulsion of student Min Jun-ho from Class 7A. This boy does not belong in our school." On what grounds? Lee Sun's voice was official and cold. He comes from a dysfunctional family, Mr. Lee interjected. His mother is a cleaner, his father absent. Children like him are a bad influence on ours. His very presence diminishes the school's prestige, added Madame Yu. My son says this boy doesn't even have a proper uniform, just some cheap rags. And he brings his lunches in plastic containers. Lee Sun slowly turned to So-Yun. She was still silent, but her hands had clenched tighter. Mrs. Min, he addressed her, his voice faltering slightly on her surname. What do you have to say? At last So-Yun looked at him. In her gaze was a storm of feelings, old pain and maternal rage. My son is the best student in his class, she said quietly. He has the highest grades in every subject. He never hurts anyone and follows every school rule. But that's not the point, Madame Yu exclaimed. The point is status. Your son received a scholarship for gifted children, Lee Sun continued, looking at So-Yun. That alone proves his exceptional abilities. Those scholarships are a mistake, Mr. Lee said sharply. Why mix different social classes? Let talented paupers study in regular schools. Lee Sun felt anger rising. He remembered what it was like to be the unfit one, to hear that you didn't deserve to be among decent people. Rising Star admits students solely on ability, he said firmly. Social background is not a criterion. But it never used to be that way. Madame Yu protested. In the past, only children from good families studied here. Times change, the principal replied coldly. If you don't agree with our policy, you're free to transfer your children to another school. A tense silence hung in the air. The parents clearly hadn't expected such a reaction. We'll appeal to the Board of Trustees, Madame Yu finally said. Do as you wish. The meeting is over. The parents stood and headed for the exit, casting angry glances at So-Yun. She, however, said nothing more. Mrs. Min, said Lee Sun once the door had closed. Please stay. So-Yun slowly turned to him. For the first time in 20 years, they were alone, and the air in the office seemed electrified with unspoken words. Hello, So-Yun, Lee Sun said quietly. Good afternoon, Mr. Principal, she answered formally, her tone unchanged. Every word cut like a knife. She was so close, just a few meters away, but between them lay the chasm of years and inflicted pain. How are you? He asked awkwardly. Wonderful, she replied with bitter irony. As you can see, I've achieved great success in life. Lee Sun swallowed hard. He had earned that sarcasm. So-Yun, Don't, she cut him off sharply. I need to get back to work. My break is over. She stood and headed for the door, but Lee Sun quickly rose and blocked her way. Wait. I need to know something. Your son. How old is he? So-Yun froze. Her face turned pale as chalk. 14, she whispered. Lee Sun felt the ground slip from under his feet. 14 years. Exactly the time since their last meeting. Is he mine? He asked in a whisper. So-Yun lifted her head and looked straight into his eyes. You have no son, she said firmly. You have only your career and your money. Just as you wanted. She brushed past him and left the office quickly, leaving Lee Sun in deafening silence. He collapsed into his chair, trying to comprehend what had just happened. He had a son. A 14-year-old boy who studied at his very school, and he hadn't even known of his existence. Memories surged again, vivid and painful. He had been 17 when an elegant couple arrived at the orphanage, Choi Myung-soo and his wife Wai-Yang. The well-known businessman and his wife couldn't have children and decided to adopt a teenager. They chose Lee Sun, a smart, well-mannered boy with good grades. They offered him a new life, private school, university, a brilliant future. But there was one problem, So-yeon. You must understand, son, his adoptive father said on the very first day. Our family has a certain standing in society. That girl from the orphanage. She's sweet, but she does not belong to our circle. But I love her. Lee-sun protested. Love will fade, his adoptive mother replied coldly. Education and social position last forever. Choose, us or her. Lee-sun agonized for weeks. So-yeon noticed the change in him, but he couldn't confess the truth. How could he explain that his new parents deemed her unworthy? The decision came abruptly when his adoptive mother gave him an ultimatum: if you don't break up with her by the end of the week, we'll find another boy to adopt. At 17, Lee-sun didn't understand that some opportunities in life never come again. He saw only the shining future ahead: university, a diploma, respect in society. The orphanage became just a nightmare to leave behind. That final Friday, they met in the park near the orphanage. So-yeon was happy. She thought he would speak of their plans for the future together. So-yeon, he began, avoiding her eyes. I need to tell you something. What is it? Her voice trembled with worry. I can't see you anymore. She froze, as if not understanding the words. What do you mean? My new parents. They're against our relationship. I have to think about my future. But we planned. We wanted to go to the same university. Those were childish dreams, So-yeon. It's time to grow up. He saw tears well up in her eyes, but forced himself to continue. We need to break up. Forever. Lee-sun, but I love you. And I don't anymore. That lie was the hardest thing he had ever said. He loved her with all his heart, but convinced himself it was the right choice. So-yeon stood for a few seconds, staring at him wide-eyed. Then she turned and walked away without another word. He never saw her again. Now, 20 years later, Lee-sun finally grasped the enormity of his betrayal. He had abandoned a pregnant girl for his own ambition. And she had raised their son alone, working menial jobs to give him an education. He picked up the phone and dialed his secretary. Find me the personal file of student Min Jun-ho from Class 7A. Bring it immediately. 10 minutes later, a thin folder lay on the principal's desk. With trembling hands, Lee-sun opened it. The boy's photograph made him flinch. Jun-ho looked so much like him at that age, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same unruly lock of hair on his forehead. But his mother's features were there too: softness, kindness, a certain delicate beauty. Lee-sun scanned the documents. The boy was born on March 15th, exactly 9 months after his last meeting with So-yeon. In the father field, there was only a dash. The academic results were impressive. Jun-ho was the best student in his class across all subjects. He excelled particularly in mathematics and literature. Teachers noted his diligence, responsibility, and natural refinement. But there were troubling notes as well. His homeroom teacher, Lim Young-soo, had left several comments. September 15th, Jun-ho came to school in torn shoes, tried to hide it from classmates. September 22nd, noticed he does not buy lunch in the cafeteria, makes do with sandwiches from home. September 30th, stayed after class to help clean. Said he wanted to help his mother with her work. Lee-sun's throat tightened. His son had grown up in poverty, yet preserved his dignity and kindness. How had So-yeon managed to raise such a boy on her own? He picked up the phone and called the homeroom teacher. Mr. Lim, I need to speak with you about Min Jun-ho. Please come to my office. A few minutes later, an elderly teacher with kind eyes entered. Lim Young-soo had been teaching literature for over 20 years and was respected by both students and colleagues. Sit down, Lee-sun offered. Tell me about Jun-ho. How does he behave in class? Lim Young-soo looked slightly surprised by the principal's interest in a particular student but answered readily, Jun-ho is an outstanding boy. Not only does he study better than anyone, he shows remarkable maturity for his age. He never complains, always ready to help others. And how are his relations with classmates? The teacher's face darkened. That's where there are problems. Some children, let's say, they are not very friendly toward him because of his family's social status. What exactly happens? Petty cruelties. They hide his things, mock his clothes, never invite him to birthdays. Jun-ho never complains, but I can see it hurts him. Lee-sun clenched his fists. His son was suffering humiliation in the very school built by his own father. And who bullies him? Mostly the children of the wealthiest families. Yu Tae-hyun, Madam Yu's son, often instigates the others. Lee Min-ho joins in as well. They see themselves as the class elite. Why didn't you intervene? Lim Young-soo sighed. I tried, but the parents of these children wield great influence at the school. The administration does not support attempts to discipline the children of powerful families. Lee-sun felt a wave of shame. He had created a system where rich children could torment the less fortunate with impunity. And what does Jun-ho himself think about the situation? He says education is more important than temporary hardships. The boy dreams of becoming a teacher, like his mother once wanted as a child. He tells me his mother works very hard so he can study in a good school. Lee-sun closed his eyes. So-yeon had sacrificed her own dreams of education for their son. And he hadn't even known the boy existed. Thank you for the information, he said. And Mr. Lim. Starting tomorrow, things will change. Any cases of bullying will be dealt with strictly, regardless of the parent's status. The teacher looked at the principal in surprise, but nodded and left. Left alone, Lee-sun pulled out his phone and found So-yeon's number. He had taken it from the staff files. She answered after a long series of rings. Hello? So-yeon, it's me. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. There's plenty to say about our son. Silence stretched for nearly a minute. Don't you dare call him your son, she said at last in an icy tone. So-yeon, please. You abandoned us 20 years ago. You made your choice then. I was young and foolish. And I was young and pregnant. But I didn't abandon our child for convenience. If I had known. What then? You still would have chosen your wealthy adoptive parents? Or pretended to be responsible for a couple of years before leaving anyway? Her words struck like slaps. And every one of them was deserved. Give me a chance to make things right, he pleaded. Too late. Far too late. She hung up. The next morning, Lee-sun arrived at school earlier than usual. He wanted to see Jun-ho with his own eyes, to talk to him. The boy was sitting in an empty classroom, bent over a textbook. The other students hadn't yet arrived. Half an hour remained before classes began. Jun-ho was preparing for lessons, using every spare minute. Lee-sun stopped at the door, studying his son. The boy was thin, his uniform clearly made of cheap fabric, his shoes bought several sizes too large to grow into. But his posture was straight, his movements confident. Jun-ho? The principal called. The boy lifted his head and jumped to his feet when he saw the principal. Good morning, Mr. Principal. His voice was polite but cautious. Lee-sun walked into the classroom and sat at the nearest desk. Don't worry, sit down. I wanted to talk to you. Jun-ho carefully sat back down, never taking his eyes off the principal. Up close, the resemblance to his father was even more striking. How are things at school? Lee-sun asked. Jun-ho tensed slightly. Everything is fine, Mr. Principal. I try to study as well as I can. And how are your relations with classmates? The boy hesitated for a second, then quickly composed himself. Normal. We're all focused on studying. Lee-sun saw that his son was avoiding a direct answer, unwilling to complain. That pride was very familiar. He had seen the same in So Yun back at the orphanage. Jun Ho, if you ever have any problems, you can come directly to me, he said gently. The boy looked at him in surprise. Thank you, but why would you worry about me? You must have much more important things to do. Lee Sun's heart clenched. Because you're my son, he wanted to say, but instead he replied, every student is important to our school. Especially talented ones like you. At that moment the first students came into the classroom. Lee Sun rose to leave, but noticed how the atmosphere changed. The children entered noisily, but upon seeing Jun Ho at his desk, their faces darkened. The nerd came early again, said a tall boy with an arrogant expression. It was Yu Tae-hyun, Madam Yu's son. Probably had the power cut off at home, so he came here to keep warm, added another boy, Lee Min-ho. The other children laughed. Jun Ho pressed his lips together but kept silently looking into his book. Lee Sun felt fury rising within him. He wanted to step in, but knew it would only worsen his son's position. Tae-hyun, Min-ho, he said coldly, calling the boys. My office. Now. The bullies' faces instantly paled. A reprimand from the principal himself was a catastrophe. But we didn't do anything now. Lee Sun left the classroom, and the two boys trailed behind like beaten dogs. In the hallway, the principal turned to them. I never want to see behavior like that again. If I find out you mock or harm Jun Ho, you'll be expelled. And no influence from your parents will help you. But, Mr. Principal. That's all. Get to class. The boys ran off, and Lee Sun stood in the corridor, fighting to contain his emotions. He couldn't openly protect his son without explaining why. But he couldn't bear to watch him suffer either. That same day, after classes ended, Lee Sun went to find So Yun. He searched the school floors and finally found her in the basement, scrubbing the floor of a utility room. She was alone, which gave him a chance to talk without prying eyes. She was focused on scrubbing a stain on the linoleum, unaware of his presence. So Yun, he called softly. She flinched and turned. Seeing him, her face became cold and guarded. What do you want? To talk. About Jun Ho. Don't you dare say his name, she snapped, rising from her knees. You have no right. I'm his father. No. A father is someone who raises a child, not someone who merely conceives him. Lee Sun stepped closer. I didn't know he existed. If I had known. What would have changed? She cut him off. Would you have given up your luxurious life and gone back to the orphanage? Or suggested I get an abortion so your career wouldn't suffer? Her words were cruel, but fair. Lee Sun knew that at 17, he probably would have chosen the latter. I've changed, So Yun. I'm not the selfish boy I was back then. Really? Her voice dripped with bitter irony. And what changed you? Money? Power? Respect in society? Loneliness, he answered quietly. 20 years of loneliness and the realization that I lost the most precious thing for the sake of empty ambitions. So Yun froze. She hadn't expected that reply. All these years, I have never truly been happy, Lee Sun continued. I achieved everything I dreamed of in my youth, but it all turned out to be empty. My adoptive parents died, leaving me nothing but money. I could never build a family, because I compared every woman to you. Tears glistened in So Yun's eyes, but she quickly brushed them away. Beautiful words. But where were you when I gave birth to our son in a charity hospital? Where were you when I had to work 3 jobs just to buy him baby formula? Where were you when he was 5 and asked why he didn't have a father? Each question hit its mark. Lee Sun felt his world collapsing. What did you tell him? The truth. That his father chose money over family. So Yun. Enough. She shouted. For 20 years I raised our son alone. For 20 years I worked as a cleaner, a saleswoman, a loader, anything, just so he could study. And now, when he's nearly grown, you suddenly decide to become a father." Her voice broke, and Lisun saw the full depth of her pain. This woman had sacrificed everything for their child, while he had enjoyed a comfortable life, never even knowing of their existence. "Let me help," he begged. "I can't change the past, but I can secure Jun-ho's future." "We don't need your help," So Yun replied coldly. "My son earned his scholarship through his own abilities, not your connections. But at school he's bullied by the children of wealthy parents. So what? That will teach him strength of character. He won't break, because he's my son." Lisun saw that persuasion was useless. So Yun had lived in struggle for too long to easily trust the man who had betrayed her. "Fine," he said at last. "But if he ever needs help, we'll manage on our own. Just like we always have." She picked up the bucket and mop and headed for the door, but stopped before leaving. "And one more thing, Lisun. Stay away from my son. He must never know who you are." The following week, the situation at school reached its breaking point. Parents, unhappy with the principal's protection of an unworthy student, called an emergency meeting of the Board of Trustees. Lisun sat at the head of the long table in the conference room, surrounded by the angry faces of the city's most influential people. Alongside Madam Yu and Mr. Lee, there were 6 more members, owners of large companies, politicians, and public figures. "Mr. Principal," Madam Yu began, "we demand an explanation for your behavior. Why are you protecting a student who does not match the status of our school?" "Min Jun-ho is the top student in his class," Lisun answered calmly. "He fully meets the school's academic standards." "This isn't about academic standards, Mr. Lee exclaimed. "It's about reputation. Our children should not have to study alongside the children of janitors." "And why not?" the principal asked coldly. Silence fell. The board members had not expected such a direct question. Because it's inappropriate," Madam Yu replied uncertainly. "Children should associate with their own kind." "So you believe social origin is more important than personal qualities and ability?" Mr. Young, the owner of a restaurant chain, interjected. "Mr. Principal, we pay enormous fees not so our children can study in an ordinary school. We want exclusivity. Exclusivity is not defined by the parent's wealth, but by the qualities of the person himself," Lisun replied. "Fine words," said Madam M., the wife of a famous surgeon. "But the reality is that children from different social backgrounds cannot study together. It creates social conflict. Conflict is not created by social difference, but by upbringing that teaches contempt for those who are poorer," the principal answered sharply. The faces of the board members darkened. They were not used to being criticized. "Mr. Choi, Mr. Lee said in an icy tone, "It seems you have forgotten who gave you your position. It was this board that appointed you principal 15 years ago." "I remember. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. But I cannot betray my principles just to keep my position." "Your principles?" Madam Yu smirked sarcastically. "And where were those principles when you yourself climbed from a poor family into a rich one? You, too, were once unworthy." Lisun felt the blow to his gut. They knew about his past. "That's precisely why I understand what it's like to be rejected for your origins," he said firmly. "Then you must also understand the necessity of choice, Mr. Lee said coldly. "Either this boy leaves the school, or someone else becomes principal." The ultimatum was clear and unambiguous. Lisun looked at the faces of those who had once been his allies. Now they were united against him. "I need time to think," he said finally. "You have until tomorrow morning," Madam Yu declared. "By then we expect either the expulsion of Min Jun-ho or your resignation." The meeting ended, and Lisun was left alone in the empty conference room. For the first time in many years, he faced a choice between career and principles. But now, at stake was not only his conscience, but also his son's future. That evening, Lee's son paced his spacious apartment, struggling to make a decision. He could yield to the board's demands, expel Jun-ho, or find a pretext to transfer him to another school. That would preserve his position and reputation. But then he would once again betray his son, just as he had betrayed his mother years ago. He walked to the window and looked out at the night city of Seoul. Lights flickered below, millions of people living their lives, most of them far removed from luxury and privilege. 20 years ago, he had chosen material well-being. Now fate was giving him another chance. Early the next morning, Lee's son arrived at school and went straight to his office. His secretary, So-hee, was already waiting with documents. "Mr. Principal," she said anxiously, "the board members are gathering in the conference hall. They're waiting for your decision." "Tell them I'll be there in half an hour," Lee's son replied. "In the meantime, find Min Jun-ho and ask him to come see me." A few minutes later, the boy entered the office. He looked uneasy. Being summoned by the principal rarely meant anything good. "Sit down, Jun-ho," Lee's son said gently. "I want to tell you something." The boy cautiously sat in the chair. "What do you know about your father?" the principal asked suddenly. Jun-ho blinked in surprise. "Excuse me, but what does that have to do with?" "Please, just answer." The boy was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "Mom said he was young and not ready for a family. That he chose his career over us." "And you're not angry with him?" Jun-ho shrugged. "At first I was. Especially when other kids teased me. But then I realized anger doesn't change anything. Mom always told me we must keep moving forward, not get stuck in the past." Lee's son felt pride for his son. At 14, the boy had a wisdom he himself had lacked at 17. "And if your father suddenly appeared and wanted to be part of your life?" Jun-ho thought for a moment. "I don't know. I guess it would depend on why he came. If out of guilt or pity, then no. But if out of genuine love, maybe it would be worth trying. Even though he abandoned you and your mom?" "People change," the boy said seriously. "Mom taught me that everyone deserves a second chance if they truly regret their mistakes." Lee's son felt tears rising in his throat. His son was wiser and kinder than he had ever been. "Jun-ho," he said quietly, "what if I told you that your father is me?" The boy froze. For several seconds he just stared silently at the director, then slowly said, Is that true?" "Yes. I was with your mother 20 years ago. We grew up in the same orphanage. I loved her, but I betrayed her for material wealth. I didn't even know you existed until last week." Jun-ho stayed silent, struggling to process what he had just heard. You're my father?" he finally whispered. "Yes. And I want to ask your forgiveness for not being there all these years." The boy stood up and walked to the window, turning his back on Lee's son. His shoulders trembled. "Does Mom know you're here?" he asked without turning around. "Yes. But she doesn't want anything to do with me. And I understand her." "What happens now?" Lee's son stood and walked to his son. "Now I'm going to the council meeting, where I will defend your right to study in this school. Because of that, I may have to resign as director." Jun-ho spun around sharply. "Because of me? Don't. I can transfer to another school." "No," Lee's son said firmly. 20 years ago I chose career over family. I will not make that mistake again." He placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Whatever happens, know this, I'm proud of you. You grew into a wonderful person, and that's thanks to your mother." The conference hall was packed. Besides the board members, there were parents, teachers, and even journalists. News of the conflict in the elite school had spread quickly across the city. Lee's son entered under a storm of unfriendly stares. Carrying a folder of documents, he looked calm, though inside he was boiling with tension. "Director," began Mrs. Yu the moment he sat down, "we are waiting for your decision." Lee Sun stood and scanned the audience. In the back rows he saw So-yeon. She had come, likely after learning about the meeting. Her face was pale but resolute. "Esteemed members of the board," he began in a firm voice, "esteemed parents. Today we are not just deciding the fate of one student. We are deciding what principles our school is guided by." "Enough philosophy," interrupted Mrs. Yu. "We want to know, are you expelling Min Jun-ho or not?" "No," Lee Sun answered clearly. "And I am prepared to explain my position publicly." He opened the folder and pulled out documents. Min Jun-ho is the best student in 7th grade in every subject. His GPA is 9.8 out of 10. He has never broken school rules, always does his homework, and helps classmates who struggle. "But he's from the wrong family," shouted one of the parents. "Wrong?" Lee Sun raised his voice. "His mother works here in our school as a cleaner. She labors 14 hours a day to give her son an education. Is that not worthy of respect?" "We do not belittle her work, Mr. Lee interjected. "But children must study among their equals." "Equals?" Lee Sun paused and looked around the hall. "And what makes children equals? Their parents' bank account size? The brand of their car? Or their personal qualities, intelligence, kindness, honesty?" The hall stirred. Some parents grumbled in protest, but others nodded thoughtfully. "Director, Mrs. Yu said coldly, you forget your place. You are here to serve our needs, not to lecture us on morality." "No," Lee Sun replied firmly. "I do not serve your needs. I am responsible for educating children. And my duty is to raise them into decent people, not snobs." He stepped forward. "Do you want the truth? Min Jun-ho is my son." The hall erupted in whispers and exclamations of shock. Journalists scribbled feverishly in their notebooks. 20 years ago, I myself was a child from an orphanage," Lee Sun continued, ignoring the noise. "A wealthy family adopted me but demanded I break ties with a girl from the orphanage. I agreed. For money and status, I betrayed love." The hall grew quieter, everyone listened spellbound. "I didn't know she had borne my child. My child. For 20 years she raised him alone, working the hardest jobs. And I enjoyed comfort, unaware of their existence." Lee Sun swept his gaze across the room. "Now fate has given me a chance to fix my mistake. And I will not choose money over family again." He turned to the board members. "If my son doesn't belong in this school, then neither do I. File my resignation." "Wait!" suddenly cried So-yeon, rising to her feet. Everyone turned toward her. She slowly walked forward, her face wet with tears. "Don't," she said softly, looking at Lee Sun. "Don't destroy your career because of us. So-yeon. We'll manage. Just like we always have." Lee Sun stepped toward her. "No. I made one mistake already. I won't repeat it." He turned back to the hall. "Min Jun-ho will stay in this school. If anyone has a problem with that, transfer your children elsewhere. And if you decide to fire me, that's your right. But I will not betray my principles." The meeting ended in scandal. Several parents demonstratively left, threatening to withdraw their children. Mrs. Yu and Mr. Lee demanded the director's immediate dismissal. But something unexpected happened. Many parents supported Lee Sun. Not all wealthy people lacked principles. Mr. Han, the owner of an IT company, stood up and said, "I am proud that my son studies in a school where the director values human dignity above money." Others joined him. A real wave of public opinion began to form. 3 days later, the board announced its decision. Lee Sun remained director, though with an official reprimand. Meanwhile, 6 families, including the Yu and Lee families, withdrew their children from the school. "Maybe that's for the best," said teacher Lim Young-soo in the staff room. Fewer troublesome parents. And change began in the school. Lee Sun introduced new rules. Any discrimination based on social status would result in expulsion. A new program was launched to support talented students from low-income families. The most important changes, however, were happening within the family. Their first meeting took place in a neutral spot, a park near the school. Jun-ho was tense, So Yeon kept her distance, and Lee Sun was as nervous as a teenager on his first date. "Mom," said the boy as they sat down on a bench, "did you love him?" So Yeon looked at Lee Sun, and in her eyes flashed the old pain, "Very much. He was my whole world." "And you, Dad?" Jun-ho turned to his father, the word sounding uncertain, as if he were trying it on. "I loved your mother more than life itself," Lee Sun answered honestly. "And I still love her. I made the greatest mistake of my life when I left her." So Yeon turned away, but Lee Sun saw her shoulders trembling. "I need time," she said softly. 20 years of pain can't be forgotten in a single day." "I understand," Lee Sun replied. "I'm ready to wait as long as it takes." From that day, they began to meet regularly. At first only the 3 of them, then Lee Sun and Jun-ho started spending time together alone. The boy turned out to be surprisingly wise and understanding. He didn't blame his father for the past, but he also wasn't quick to give his trust. Lee Sun told his son about his childhood in the orphanage, taught him basketball, helped him with math. Gradually, real father and son bonds began to form. It was harder with So Yeon. She remained polite, but cold. The wounds from 20 years ago healed slowly. One evening, a month after the school scandal, Lee Sun came to their home. So Yeon and Jun-ho lived in a tiny apartment on the city's outskirts. It was clean and cozy, but poverty showed in everything, from the cheap furniture to wallpaper patched with tape. "Let me help," said Lee Sun, glancing around. "I can rent you a proper apartment." "No," So Yeon replied firmly. "We're not beggars in need of handouts. This isn't charity. I'm Jun-ho's father. It's my responsibility. Your responsibility was 20 years ago. You refused it then." Jun-ho, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, raised his head. "Mom, maybe we should agree. I'm tired of watching you exhaust yourself at work." "Jun-ho," So Yeon said sharply. "Go to your room." The boy sighed and left, and So Yeon and Lee Sun were left alone in the kitchen. "You're punishing him for my mistakes," Lee Sun said quietly. "I'm protecting him from disappointment," she replied. "What happens when you again find something more important than family?" "That won't happen." "How can I know?" "You lied to me before." Lee Sun sat down at the table across from her. "So Yeon, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But give me a chance to prove I've changed." "And if you haven't changed? If in a year you get tired of playing happy family? Then you'll be right, and I'll leave forever." They looked at each other in silence for a long time. Finally, So Yeon sighed, "Fine. But I have conditions." "What are they?" "No luxury. Jun-ho must understand the value of money. No expensive gifts without a reason. And most importantly, if you disappear again, never come back into our lives." Agreed. The following months became a time of trial for all 3. Lee Sun sold his luxurious apartment and bought a modest 3-room place near So Yeon and Jun-ho's. He insisted that So Yeon quit her cleaning job, but she agreed only to cut her hours. "I can't sit idle," she explained. "Work gives me independence." Lee Sun understood and didn't press. The school changed too. With the most troublesome families gone, the atmosphere became friendlier. Jun-ho was no longer bullied. In fact, he became one of the most popular students in his class. One evening, Lee Sun picked his son up from extra math lessons. The boy looked thoughtful. "What's wrong?" asked his father. Today the history teacher talked about the Korean War. About how families were separated and couldn't find each other for years. And I thought that we were separated too. Not by war, but by your decision. Lee Sun stopped in the middle of the street. Jun-ho. I'm not angry, Dad. I just sometimes wonder, what if you had chosen us back then? What would our life have been like? It was a hard question. Lee Sun answered honestly, probably very difficult. I had no money, no education, no connections. We might have lived in poverty. But we would have been together. Yes. We would have been a family. Jun-ho nodded. You know, Mom never spoke badly about you. Even when I was angry and asked why you left, she always said you were just young and scared. Lee Sun felt his throat tighten. Your mother is an extraordinary woman. I know. And I understand why you loved her. They walked in silence until Jun-ho asked, Do you still love her? Yes, Lee Sun said honestly. More than ever. And does she love you? I don't know. Maybe the feelings are still there, but the pain is too strong. Mom cried for a long time that night when you told me you were my father, Jun-ho said quietly. I heard her through the wall. She tried to be quiet, but I still heard. Lee Sun stopped. She cried? Yes. And she whispered your name. Lee Sun's heart began to race. So all was not lost. Winter turned to spring, and with the warm days their unusual family slowly began to heal. So-yeon no longer stayed silent in Lee Sun's presence. They could calmly discuss Jun-ho's school matters and plans for the future. In April, Jun-ho won first place in the City Math Olympiad. That evening, the three of them celebrated in a small restaurant. I'm so proud of you, said So-yeon, hugging her son. Mom, everyone's watching, Jun-ho said shyly, though it was clear he was pleased. Lee Sun watched them silently. Over these months he realized the kind of incredible family he had once lost. So-yeon had raised their son alone, yet managed to instill in him all the best qualities. Do you remember, So-yeon suddenly said, turning to Lee Sun, how you dreamed of becoming a math teacher? He was surprised. For the first time, she spoke about the past without pain in her voice. I remember. And you wanted to work with children? Yes. To open a center for orphans. Why didn't you follow that dream? Asked Jun-ho. So-yeon smiled sadly. There was no time, no money for education. I had to work to feed you. Lee Sun felt another pang of guilt. Because of his decision, So-yeon had not only been left alone with a child, but also robbed of her chance to get an education. It's never too late to return to your dreams, he said quietly. At 35? So-yeon shook her head. Too late for university. Why? I know people who earned their degrees at 40, even 50. Mom, Dad's right. Jun-ho burst out. You're so smart, you'll get in easily. So-yeon looked at her son, then at Lee Sun. And who's going to work? Who will pay for my studies? I will, Lee Sun said firmly. It's my duty as Jun-ho's father. And as a man who wants to make up for his mistakes. Something like hope flickered in her eyes, but she quickly restrained herself. Don't do me a favor. This isn't a favor. It's justice. That evening, when they walked So-yeon home, she suddenly stopped by the entrance. Lee Sun, thank you for dinner. And for everything else. Don't mention it. She hesitated, then added, I'll think about your offer. About university. It was the first sign that the ice was beginning to thaw. The next day, Lee Sun found out there was a program at the Pedagogical University for working adults. He brought So-yeon all the documents and helped her fill out the application. You do realize this will take 4 years? She asked while signing the papers. I do. And I'll be very busy with my studies. I'll help with Jun-ho. And what if you get tired of it? What if you meet someone else? Lee-sun took her hands in his. Seo-yeon, I lived 20 years without you. Every single day I regretted my decision. I don't need anyone but you and our son. She didn't pull her hands away, and that was a small victory. That summer Seo-yeon entered university. She was admitted without exams. Her school grades had been so high that the committee made an exception. On her first day of classes, Lee-sun and Jun-ho walked her to the university. Nervous? Her son asked. Very, Seo-yeon admitted. I'm the oldest among all the freshmen. But the prettiest, said Lee-sun, and she blushed like a girl. That evening they waited for her at home with dinner. Seo-yeon returned tired but happy. Imagine, we'll have practice in orphanages. I'll be able to help children like we once were, Lee-sun. He realized this was her way of turning past pain into future good. The months flew quickly. Their relationship grew warmer and warmer. Lee-sun helped Jun-ho with homework while Seo-yeon was at lectures. On weekends they walked together, went to the movies, took picnics. One autumn evening, when Jun-ho was at a classmate's birthday, Lee-sun and Seo-yeon stayed home alone. She was preparing for an exam, he was reviewing school reports. Lee-sun, she suddenly said, looking up from her textbook. Yes? Thank you. For what? For helping me believe in myself again. For giving me the chance to study. For becoming a real father to Jun-ho. He set the papers aside and looked at her. In the lamplight, she was as beautiful as she had been 20 years ago. And I want to thank you, he said. For raising our son into such a wonderful person. For forgiving me. For giving me a second chance. They looked at each other, and it was as if an invisible thread stretched between them. Lee-sun, Seo-yeon whispered. I want you to know. I never loved anyone after you. I couldn't. His heart began to beat faster. Seo-yeon. I was angry at you, I hated you, but I could never stop loving you. He stood up and walked over to her. Seo-yeon rose too, and they found themselves very close. Can we start over? He whispered. Not start over, she answered. Continue from where we left off. Their lips met in a kiss they had been waiting for 20 years. In that kiss were forgiveness, love, and hope for the future. When they finally parted, Seo-yeon smiled through her tears. But if you ever leave me again. Never, Lee-sun said firmly. This time it's forever. 2 years later, their family's life was completely mended. Seo-yeon was doing well at university, Jun-ho had become one of the best students at school, and Lee-sun finally felt truly happy. But life had another trial prepared for them. In January, during her final year, Seo-yeon suddenly fell ill. At first it seemed like a common cold, but when the symptoms lingered for weeks, the doctors insisted on a full examination. The diagnosis was serious, pneumonia with complications. Seo-yeon had to stay in the hospital for several weeks. Lee-sun and Jun-ho took turns watching over her bed. The boy, now 16, grew up by years in those days. Dad, he said once in the hospital corridor, will Mom get better? Of course she will, Lee-sun replied confidently, though he was just as afraid as his son. And if she doesn't? Nothing will happen. Your mom is strong. She's been through so many hardships that this illness won't break her. And indeed, after a month Seo-yeon began to recover. But the illness left its mark. She had to take academic leave and postpone her graduation for a year. It's nothing, she said, lying on the couch at home. A year is no big deal. But Lee-sun saw how upset she was. Seo-yeon had dreamed of finishing university quickly and starting work with children. Maybe it's a sign, she said one evening. Maybe I shouldn't have started studying at my age. Don't talk nonsense, Lee-sun replied firmly. You're just tired. Rest, and then continue. And if I get sick again? Then we'll handle it too. Together. That word, together, sounded like a vow. In spring, when Seo-yeon fully recovered and was preparing to return to university, Lee-sun made an important decision. They were walking together in the same park where they had met again after so many years. Jun-ho ran off to feed the ducks, while Lee-sun and Seo-yeon sat on a bench, watching him. Seo-yeon, said Lee-sun, pulling a small box from his pocket. I want to tell you something. She looked at the box in surprise. What is it? 23 years ago, I should have proposed to you. Back then I was too young and foolish. But now I want to correct that mistake. He knelt down right there by the bench. Min Seo-yeon, will you marry me? Seo-yeon gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. In the box lay a simple but beautiful ring with a small diamond. Lee-sun. I know I don't deserve you. I know I caused you so much pain. But I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I want to be your husband and Jun-ho's father officially. Tears streamed down Seo-yeon's cheeks. But what if I get sick again? What if I can't give you more children? What if? Then we'll go through it together, Lee-sun interrupted. In sickness and in health, in sorrow and in joy. The way it should be in a real family. Jun-ho, noticing what was happening, ran up to them. Mom, what's going on? Your father is proposing to me, Seo-yeon said through tears. And what will you say? The boy asked, his heart pounding. Seo-yeon looked at Lee-sun, still kneeling, then at her son, then again at the man she had loved all her life. Yes, she said softly. Yes, I will marry you. Jun-ho shouted with joy and threw himself into his parents' arms. Passers-by turned their heads at their happy cries, but they didn't care. Lee-sun slipped the ring onto Seo-yeon's finger and kissed her, feeling that at last their family was whole. The wedding took place 3 months later in the same orphanage where they had grown up. The director of Hope, an elderly woman who remembered them as children, agreed to hold the ceremony in the orphanage garden. How symbolic, she said, that your love began here and here it is blessed. Only the closest people were present at the wedding, Lee-sun's colleagues, Seo-yeon's classmates, teachers from the school, and of course, the children of the orphanage. Jun-ho stood as his father's witness, and one of Seo-yeon's fellow students as the bridesmaid of honor. The most touching moment was Jun-ho's speech. I always dreamed of having a complete family. But now I understand that family isn't just having a mom and a dad. Family is when people are willing to fight for their happiness and never give up, even when it seems everything is lost. A year later, Seo-yeon graduated from university and opened a center to help children from disadvantaged families. Lee-sun helped her organize and fund the project. Jun-ho entered medical school, dreaming of becoming a pediatrician. He said he wanted to help children, just as he had once been helped. The Rising Star School, under Lee-sun's leadership, became an example of how elite education could be combined with humanity. Families strove to get their children admitted, not only the wealthy, but also talented kids from all walks of life. Sometimes, walking through the park in the evenings, Lee-sun and Seo-yeon would recall the past. But now the memories brought no pain, they had become part of their shared story, the story that led to a happy ending. You know, Seo-yeon said one day, maybe it was meant to be this way. Maybe we had to go through all those trials to truly appreciate our happiness. Maybe, Lee-sun agreed. But I wouldn't want to walk that path again. And you won't have to. Now we're together forever. They stopped at the fountain where, many years ago, they had shared their first kiss as teenagers. The moon reflected on the water, spring flowers blooming all around. I love you, Lee-sun said, as he had so many years before. And I love you, Seo-yeon answered. In spite of everything. Their story had begun with loss, had passed through pain and betrayal, but ended as every true love story should, with finding each other again, and understanding that some things are truly worth fighting for. Family, love, forgiveness, and a second chance, all of this they found in each other, proving that it is never too late to correct the mistakes of the past and begin a new chapter of life. And in the Rising Star School, on the wall of the principal's office, hung a simple photograph, 3 happy people in a park, embracing beneath blooming trees. Students often asked who they were, and Lee Sun always replied with a smile, "That's my family. The most precious thing I have." And it was true. After long years of searching for meaning in career and material success, he finally understood that real happiness lay in simple things, and coming home every evening to the woman he loved and their son, and shared dinners and talks about the day, and plans for the future and the certainty that whatever happened, they would face it together. Sometimes, to find happiness, you have to lose it first. Sometimes you need to walk a long road to return to the place where you began. But when you finally return, you realize it was all worth it. Every mistake, every pain led you to that moment of complete and unconditional joy. The story of Lee Sun, Seo Yun, and Jun Ho became a legend at the school. Teachers told it to new students as an example that true love and family values are more important than any material wealth. And children from poorer families, looking at Jun Ho's success, understood that origins do not determine destiny. It is determined by character, perseverance, and the support of loved ones.